welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at 5 rumored IPOs in 2022. One of them I'm very excited about, and I hope that you're going to tell me which one of these companies you're excited about as well. But before we get started, here's a little bit of a disclaimer that you need to read. Here you go. Alright, so if you don't know what an IPO is an initial public offering. It's when a company offers its shares to the general public for the first time. Meaning that it's not just closed to certain people who are in certain circles, private equity people, individuals or companies. It is open to you and I to purchase on the open market. So either London Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, one of the general markets, which basically means that if you are in that company as a private investor, what it essentially does is it allows those investors to sell their shares, and it allows the company to raise money for future growth. So an IPO is kind of like a milestone in a company's journey. That's when they really become a business that is there for the benefit of shareholders. And if a company does well as a shareholder, if they decide to pay dividends, you as retail investors get to partake in those dividends, which is essentially a share of the profits. Now, without further ado, let's get into the 5 companies that are on this list. So the first company on this list is Virgin Atlantic, not to be mistaken for Virgin Galactic. Very different. One space, one is terrestrial, okay? But both companies owned by Sir Richard Branson. And it's interesting really with Virgin Atlantic, because I was under the impression that this was already a public company, but obviously it isn't. Now, let's have a look at the sector that this is in, because this is really important, especially against the backdrop of where we are right now. So Virgin Galactic is all about long-haul flights, pretty much. If you're going to Singapore, if you're going to America, Australia, you're going to probably be looking at booking with Virgin Galactic, or at least there will be one of your options alongside other carriers in the space. Now, this is January 2022, and we know that COVID has decimated the travel industry for the last 2 years. So purchasing this kind of company does need a little bit of, faith in what they're actually doing, in the numbers, in the financials, in the vision for the business moving forward. Now, interestingly, Richard Branson owns 51% of Virgin Atlantic. The rest belongs to US Delta Airlines. So that's a domestic US airline carrier. And interestingly, they have never sold any of their shares. Even through all of the troubles that we've had with the pandemic, they've held fast. So with this particular offering, if it does come onto the public market, it will be interesting to see how much, they'll probably create new shares, but it'll be interesting to see how, and if not, the US Delta Airlines stakeholdings gets diluted in any way, shape or form, or even if Richard Branson's stakeholding gets diluted in any way, shape or form. One thing I do know is because of the fact that, Omicron and the pandemic is still very much with us, if they do decide to IPO this year, they'll be very concerned about making sure that they don't have a dud on the day of IPO, i.e. the share price goes up and the share price just goes down. Kind of like Robinhood if you are within Robinhood on IPO day. It's not been pretty at all.
Hello, you all right?
Yes.
See, I see you got an empty drink there. I want to show you how you can get a free refill. Okay. You want to see?
Yeah.
Yeah? Watch. Watch closely. Watch.
Oh my God! That's crazy!
So the second company on this list is a company called Brewdog. Now, Brewdog for a while have been trying to lure individual investors to invest in them, and as part of that, they're offering discounts on merchandise and offering little perks like you can get beers on your birthday, so on and so forth. But we need to think about the sector that they're invested in. So they're part of the hospitality sector, and again, against the backdrop of COVID, the hospitality sector has been hit quite significantly. Brewdog have taken a cut in profits by about 50%, which is quite large. And I remember it was around about June, maybe 2021 or so, they had some really bad press. They had a group of employees, current and I believe former, band together and write a letter to the CEO complaining about the culture and the work environment. And I remember this distinctly because I think that the CEO or the guy in charge of the company at the time, hashed up the initial response, didn't respond to it very well. There was a bit of a backlash, and he had to backtrack and apologize. And so when you think about a company like this, you think about, new company trying to get onto the market via an IPO. The culture and the people are very, very important for companies at the beginning of that journey. Like I said, IPOs are normally a really, really big milestone. So it will be interesting to see what happens here. The valuation on it at the moment is about £2 billion, which is 10 times their revenue at this point in time. So if they do IPO this year, I'll be very, very interested to see what the investor appetite is likely to be for this kind of company against the backdrop of the pandemic and the fact that it isn't really it's not as big as a brand as someone like Virgin Atlantic, for example. So this will be an interesting one to watch.
Tonight, the SEC says that it is actively monitoring market volatility after certain stocks like GameStop have been soaring, fueled by amateur day traders. A new generation of investors using their phones and communicating on Reddit are creating chaos on Wall Street and also exposing potential flaws in our financial system.
The third company I'm going to cover here is Reddit. Now, everybody should remember Reddit. It was 2021 where I believe that they had a lot of news about them because of Wall Street bets. And Reddit apparently have 52 daily million users. As a social media platform, they have a really, really high community. But it's good that, their community tends to spread across different things. It's not just about Wall Street bets, right? They have quite vast communities all talking about different things. It's interesting because the value for this one is about $10 billion as of August last year. Now, social media platform has come into a little bit they've taken a little bit of slack over the last year or so for various reasons, privacy, and particularly for them, Wall Street bets was, I guess, a bit of a conundrum for them. It's great to have that kind of attention, but to have that kind of attention for perhaps the wrong reasons and potentially have the SEC in the United States start to investigate your platform and how it's being used, it can raise real question marks sometimes. So this one for me, I think could be a really, really good investment. Although I don't really understand what their monetization procedure is. How do they monetize it? I don't really know that right now. If I were to put money into this, I'll need to understand what those numbers actually look like specifically. I need to understand what the future plans for Reddit are. Are they going to keep it as it is? What are the actual plans to actually grow that business moving forward? But you can't deny, for a company that has 52 million daily active users, there will be ways for them to monetize that. And I don't use Reddit actively at the moment, so I don't know if they're already running ads or they're sending any kind of advertising at all. But I would need to understand that model. If you compare them to the likes of Facebook, for example, who is, again, a social media giant, not obviously, Reddit's not in the same realm as Facebook, but if you start to have a look at the revenue that Facebook are able to generate, or Meta, I should say, are able to generate, at least you might be able to take a little bit of that information, extrapolate that into Reddit to try and gauge what their profitability, what revenue they might be able to generate. So this one for me could be a really, really good one to go at, but I would definitely need to do a little bit more research into this one specifically.
I want a bank that makes money easy.
That sounds perfectly reasonable.
And you are?
We're a bank called Monzo.
Oh.
Can you tell me when I'm running a little low on cash?
We certainly can.
Cool. Can I afford these?
You certainly can't, sorry. Can't afford that either.
Can you make splitting bills easy?
Super easy. Check this out.
I want a bank that really listens.
We're all ears.
Can you do the washing up?
No, we're a bank. You make Monzo.
Now, the next one on the list is Monzo. Now, Monzo is a UK bank. They're in the financial services sector. Now, it's interesting with Monzo because they started out as an app-based online bank, right? Challenger bank. They're now more moved into this traditional, more bricks and mortar locations, which is interesting because the traditional banks are kind of regressing from the physical bricks and mortar locations, which is an interesting dynamic, being that that Monzo is a very much a new age challenger online bank as it started out. And it's interesting because their business model historically has been to generate revenues via transaction fees. And that is problematic because you will probably know if you probably bank with someone where your account is completely free and you don't have that many transaction fees. And whilst that is a good thing for consumers, it's bad for companies because if you have transaction fees that are too high, people will simply move from you to somebody else, which is not great if you're looking to invest in a business. They know this, and so what they've basically done is they've actually transitioned their business to more of a lending facility like most banks do. So they're doing things like personal loans, for example. So now they're not just relying on transaction fees. What they've been able to do is increase their interest income on personal loans, for example, from 8.4 million to about 21.4 million in the last 12 months. But the fact of the matter is, Monzo is still a loss-making business at this time. So even if they do IPO this year, I think there is going to have to be a clear sign of how they're going to be able to turn that around and at what point they're going to start hitting profit. On day one when they IPO, they don't necessarily have to be making profits. For years, Tesla didn't make any profits, but at least they had a plan, a roadmap to profits. And I think that's what you're going to have to see from the likes of Monzo. The other thing that I'm in the industry, obviously. The other thing that I don't necessarily agree with that they've done is they've recently launched a commercial version of Buy Now, Pay Later, essentially something like Kalana, which I think is a really dangerous tool for young people, really, if you don't explain it properly. And I've been in banking for a very, very long time, and I hope that they're doing the right thing and explaining the pros and cons properly, because traditionally banks haven't done that across the years, and I know that for a fact. I hope that they get that right. Is this one that I would invest in? Probably not. On this basis of the buy now, pay later, I don't think that that really sits well with me. I think that can be more of a danger to most people than any at all. But it will be interesting to see what happens, and if they do IPO, what information we're going to see later on.
You're looking at 60 satellites hurtling into the sky. And over the next few decades, Elon Musk is hoping to send 42,000 of these satellites to space, 15 times the number of operational satellites in orbit today. It's part of Starlink, the expansive constellation from Musk and SpaceX that hopes to bring the world low-latency, high-speed internet, promising no more buffering and nearly instantaneous internet in every corner of the world.
Right, so the last company on the list is the one that I'm really excited about. Is actually Starlink. Now, Starlink is owned by Elon Musk. If you follow me, you know that I am a big Elon Musk fan. I almost called my monthly magazine Elon's, and I started thinking about how I might be able to use vectors of his face, and I thought, no, that's going to be problematic. But Elon, for me, is a mad scientist. He's a pioneer. He's just a futuristic mind, and it's a mind that we need. So Starlink is essentially his business where he's putting satellites into space to beam high quality, high speed internet to every corner of the globe. He already has 2,000 satellites up there. Now, this is the interesting piece. Because he is forward thinking, he's quite futuristic in his thinking, it is rumored that the space industry or the space economy is going to be worth $1 trillion by the time we hit 2040. And he already has the march on everybody in this sector. So the potential for growth here is absolutely staggering. One of the downside risks that I think that he will face is potentially competition and the competition rules that might come in place. As you probably know, Jeff Bezos almost messed up the SpaceX contract with NASA because it was deemed as though they didn't open up that contract for other people to tender, even though SpaceX was best positioned to be able to fulfill that contract. The fear is something like that is going to happen in the space economy, which he has the march on. But this is one that I'm very, very excited about. I'm even more excited about in the fact that Elon has muted that potentially he will give Tesla shareholders the dibs. So first come, first serve on this IPO if it happens this year, which means that I will certainly be holding some money aside to basically invest in Starlink if this does come to fruition. Again, we don't know whether any of these are actually going to happen. We don't have their IPO dates. They're not on the IPO calendar just now. And of course, because they are IPOs, you have to do your research. So understanding what the business is all about, the future plans, the financials, all of that kind of stuff is really, really important. These aren't decisions to be made lightly, but these are 5 that I would say that I'm very excited about Starlink for sure. What are your thoughts? Which one of these are you excited about? Are you like me? Are you thinking years and years into the future? Are you liking Starlink? Let me know in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed this. Catch you next week.